If you have a more like natural vibe, a little more crunchy, like this is a great way to just decorate your home for fall. Today we're gonna be showing you how to make a dried floral wreath. Rather than grabbing something that's pre-made or prefabricated, this is a great way to bring your own hand and your own style into your home.
It's going to be more unique, more personalized, and more special to you because you created it yourself.
This project is inspired by an installation that we created at Magnolia Market this fall. This is a great way to bring something that we did that was really oversized into your home in a way that makes sense. So we're going to show you just a general way that we enjoy putting florals together, but please put your own spin on it, make it your own style, and let's get going. So the first thing that you're going to need is a base for your wreath. What we've chosen today is a thin grapevine wreath. You can maybe find this at any craft store. It might be a bit thicker, or you can do what we've done, which is order one online. The three main categories that we're going to want to use to build our wreath are going to be plume grasses. These are really going to be the anchor of the wreath. These are reedy grasses that usually have either grains or something that almost feels like hair or fur at the top. It's really voluminous at the top. That's what's important. And these can be found near bodies of water, or you can find them at your craft store. The next thing that will be really important to our composition are dried or preserved leaves. Leaves are a really wonderful way to bring that fall kind of vibe to this wreath. These are preserved beech leaves that we ordered online. We've also foraged some different leaves that we've dried, and we'll try to use both of those. The last ingredient for our wreaths that will be really important to break up the texture of the grasses are going to be textural bits and bobs. Those will be things like berries or different seed pods, little ferny things that we kind of add in just to give it a little bit more interest and a little bit more texture.
So all these little bits and bobs that we're going to be adding, they're like little background dancers of the show who are going to keep your interest, little discovery moments that you're going to see along your wreath. They're small little design elements that you can add on that gives your wreath extra life and gesture.
So we're going to walk through this wreath making process with a few main steps. The first thing that we're going to do is to lay out the composition. We're going to grab some reedy plume grasses, kind of start bringing these over here.
Since we're working with such a thin wreath, using large plume grasses like this is going to be a little bit overwhelming. So we're going to cut them down and create our own smaller stems to cater to our thin wreath. I'm just going to gather with my fingers off of this about the size that I want. And I'm going to cut them as close to the stem at the base as I can. So once you cut it as close off of the stem as you can on your plume grass, you're just going to make sure your bundle of these that we've cut are really tight and about the same length, because I'm going to use one of my pre-cut stemming wires. So you're going to take it and just set it about the length you want. You don't want to go too high up because we're going to tape it on here with floral tape, so you don't want any wire sticking out. So you're going to want to keep your wire at the base. Keep it nice and tight and neat with your fingers. And we are going to wrap it with this floral tape. So this tape is really great because as you slide your fingers ever so slightly, the heat and the friction of your fingers are going to activate an adhesive, which is going to keep our plume grasses onto our new stem. So we are just going to get a really tight little wrap at the top. And then I'm just slowly gonna move my finger down the tape, activating the adhesive and twisting it, kind of adding to my angle to use less tape and just twisting as I go. This is gonna keep the new bits of grass on there. It's really sticky, rips really easily. What's great about making our own stems out of this wire is that these are dried florals. So if we were to use their actual stem, they'd probably snap and not be as sturdy. So this is a sturdier way to add in our grasses in smaller bits.
I'm gonna take these little pieces that Megan has so kindly made, thank you, and I am just gonna start laying things around my wreath. So step one, we're gonna start by just laying out these larger anchor pieces on our composition. We're not even gonna attach them yet. Once we feel like we've got something good that we wanna work with, we'll go back in and start attaching them all together. We're gonna make a negative space up here, meaning that we aren't gonna put anything in here. We're just gonna let the grapevine wreath shine. And then we're gonna kind of build it all up so it's gonna get thicker until we get to our focal area. This is going to be focal just because we've got two different directions. Anytime you have a directional change like that, I mean, think about like the part in your hair, right? I know that's a weird thing, but like it is kind of a focal area. Just by having these two pieces that are going in opposite directions, we're creating something focal. We're totally going to like play that up, but this is the beginning of that right now. You probably are also noticing that I am laying these down in a sequential way so that what's at my focal point, or what will be my focal point, is on top. And then each piece comes underneath it, so these top parts are going to obscure the stem below them. Now, we aren't even gonna see those as much. They're gonna go to the back of the wreath, but this is a nice way to work on a wreath. So the little pieces at the ends, those should always be on the bottom so that you have something overlapping on the top. And you're not gonna see kind of the inner workings, right? Because we want it to be magical.
I think this looks great.
I am wondering, though, if we want to spice things up a little bit.
I say yes. I love her.
Oh, you love a zesty spice.
I love a zesty spice.
Oh, man. So for what we're doing, we're just going to go ahead and cut that down. This guy has a little bit more of a curly texture. Yeah, I think he's cute. I'm not loving the like doot,
Yeah.
doot, you know what I mean? The alternating. I want to make it a little bit more organic. And so I don't know.
I really like that because he's kind of adding like a.
Yeah, we're bringing in some blonde. I really like this composition. I think that it looks pretty solid. But what do you think?
Yeah.
Need to add anything?
No, I agree. I'm glad we added these guys in. I like the gesture.
I agree.
That they bring.
Yeah, they're like a little bit of playfulness in there.
I think we're set. I'm excited to see some leaves and berries in this.
Cool. So now that we've got this laid out, we've got our stems that need to be wired. We've got our other stems that just needed to get cut shorter, cut down to size. We're gonna show you how to fasten this all onto the wreath. A great way, and Megan and I do this all the time when we're making displays, once we've got stuff set into place, a great way to kind of remember how you had it so that you can take it off of there and attach it is just to take a photo overhead. I think that we have a pretty good idea with this one, so I'm just gonna kind of scoot this up and then
Perfect.
scoot these guys off. I'm gonna go ahead and start with this one that's wired because it's gonna be the easiest one for me. So I want them to lay like this against the front of the grapevine wreath. So I'm gonna take my wired stem, just gonna note where I'm seeing the top of this plume, and that's where I'm gonna try to find a spot to stick my wire back through the wreath. So this is what it looks like from the back, nothing impressive. And then I'm just gonna keep pulling it until all I'm really seeing are the plumes. Now, on the back, we can just find a good attachment spot. The wreath is already holding this in place. So we don't really need to do that much. We just wanna make sure, you know, if your 2-year-old comes along and tugs on this, it's not just gonna fall right out. So we're gonna find a good spot to kind of wrap our wire. It doesn't have to be immediate or anything like that. We'll make our wire lay against the back of the wreath so you can't see it from the front. And then we'll find a nice little twig. I want to be careful with them so he doesn't snap. These are pliable, but not to the point where you couldn't snap one. So we really just need to go around it one time. Grab our clippers, and do a little snip. I always like to make sure that this wire is bent in a little bit because I don't like stabbing myself on it later.
Never fun.
Not my fave. All right, so this guy is not wired. So let's show you how to do that. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're kind of gonna note like where the actual plume begins on the wreath, and that's where I'm gonna look for an entry spot. If the reed is kind of splitting like that, do yourself a favor and just clean it up a bit. You'll notice probably that the things that you wire, it is easier to get them to lay flatter on the wreath, but it's not like it's impossible. And I'm actually gonna show you how to use the paddle wire right now to make an invisible tether. So you can see on this one, the gesture is kind of going like, whoo. I just want it to go in that cyclical way right now. Later, we're gonna add some more of these little like bursts that are gonna be really fun. But right now, we want everybody to play by the rules, fall in line, do that whole thing. So just like Megan did when she was trimming down some of these reeds to make like a little tuft, I'm gonna go into the stem, the really little skinny stem. I'm gonna pull out some of these. Now, if I were to take this wire and just like wrap it around here, you would see it, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of make a U shape with this wire. So I'm gonna just shove this through just like that. So the U that I made is right there on top. And like these little guys are gonna come over it and see, you're not even gonna see it anymore. I'm gonna turn them over to the back, give them a little twist. And then this is where I always like to use a pair of needle nose because there's a reason we've got tools, y'all. They just can get it tighter than we can with our fingers. And then we're gonna cut off the extra again. I'm gonna, like I said before, give myself just a little tail. After we clipped that wire again, just wanna tuck it in. So keep going all the way around, just get it all roughed in and wired in. We're gonna get our base and our anchor on here, and then we'll be able to add some more interesting parts to our wreath.
Yay, I think it looks great. Yeah.
Yeah?
It's a really great base to the others that we have to add.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna start to add some things that actually bring some contrast. So we're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to lay pieces on top, see what works together and what doesn't, and then we'll attach once we finish blocking that in. We foraged a large branch of live oak last week and let it dry. This particular tree is a great option, but let me explain why, so that if you have something similar in your area, you can use it as well. We're really looking for leaves that look like fall, but that are able to dry. So the live oak is an evergreen tree, but it looks deciduous. So it looks like one of those plants that would drop its leaves in the fall. But since it actually doesn't do that, it's going to really hold on to those leaves with a tenacity that a deciduous tree won't. All that to say, once we have this dried, these leaves are gonna stay on there pretty well and they're not gonna drop. Megan is chopping this thing down into more bite-sized pieces, and I'm just gonna kind of hold this along and see where I think that it might end up fitting. As you can see, these woody stems are a little bit more rigid, and while some of them have a gesture that just carries along with the wreath, we also have others that are having a nice little moment where they're coming off of the wreath. I think that feels really nice and organic. So with these, since they're not as pliable as our grasses, we're gonna want to be really careful with how we are sticking them into the wreath so that we can maintain the correct gesture. So as we're working these in, I'm still trying to think about the scale of everything on this wreath. I want the smaller bits to go in towards the end because I think tapering towards the end gives it a nice look. So we want to add our mass down in this area.
I like how the natural point is at the end too, so it feels complete, doesn't
Yeah.
leave you hanging.
I also think some caspia could be nice in there. We have this preserved caspia that we ordered, and it actually has like a terracotta tint to it. I am usually, as a rule, not into anything that has an added color, but I think this stuff was actually really pretty. And I'm gonna try to overlay it a little bit with the live oak leaves. Since the live oak is one of the darker tones that we're using, and it also has this completely different texture than any of the plume grasses, it's going to naturally stand out and be very focal. So we want it to feel like it's really growing in this wild way and not just something that is like everything in its perfect place. We want the nature of it and the organicness of it to shine and do what it's gonna do. So with these filler pieces, we're gonna go ahead and attach everything just like we did with our first step. It'll be a little bit more complex now that we've got a lot of stuff attached, but just keep finding the way through the reed grasses. And if you need hot glue in this step, usually the fillers are a little bit more hefty than these grasses, so that's totally fine. Just make sure that it's hidden on the back of your wreath. So when we're looking for materials, when we group this all together, we want to make sure that the color story makes sense together. I really like how this color story has contrast. We've got earthy browns going to an olive green, and then we've got lighter tones in between there with the wheat grasses and our bleached fern. I think that that color story is nice. It's subtle, but it has a pop, and it's going to complement really nicely. The other thing that we're looking for is we want to have a difference in textures. We've got the leathery green leaves of our live oak. We've got kind of these wispy ferns that are papery. And then we have more fuzzy, wavy grasses that are in the background. It all works together really nicely. It's all something that you would see in nature together, I feel like. I don't love to put like a tropical something with, you know, some oak leaf. It doesn't really make sense. So we want everything to be going to the same party. That's a great way to say it. Yeah. You might find with this step that it might not feel exactly like it did the last couple times where you were laying everything on top. Since we have so much material now, it's really important to see how it's all gonna play together and how the attachment is going to affect the gesture. I always find that I'm kind of playing as I go here. So while I have some of it laid out, I feel really confident about some of this. So I'm gonna go ahead and attach it because I don't wanna forget how I had it. These are the parts where your hot glue gun is gonna be your best friend. They're so small, and oftentimes they're so delicate that it doesn't really make sense to do the previous attachment method that we've used. We're just gonna go ahead and get little beads of hot glue. I like to get the hot glue all the way around these little stems so that it can stick in there really nicely. And they're so light. The bits and bobs are always gonna be things that don't really carry much weight, so they should go in right where you glue them. This one is not even woven into the wreath, the actual grapevine wreath part. This is just kind of sitting in this pampas, and that's gonna hold it in place. So these are just the final touches to our wreath. While you're doing this at home, just make sure you keep assessing. This is the part where we're doing all the fun stuff. We're finishing it up. It's gonna look really, really beautiful, and it's gonna be done soon. So all this tedious work that you've done is gonna pay off. So we're just gonna finish up with a few more, and then we're gonna work on our focal point and be done. We've laid our foundational layer, we've added in our fillers, we've gotten all of our cute little bits and bobs in there, and now we're just gonna return to our focal point. We're gonna try to add a little bit of volume here and a little bit more interest so that this is really the place that pops. You need to do this last because all that volume is not very good to keep turning your wreath over. So we always wanna do this at the very end so that it looks the best. So for this, you're gonna find that you're going back to all of your layers. You're going to build a little bit of volume by kind of fanning up some of those plume grasses that you used in step one. You might even find that you wanna add a little acorn in there from our filler step, and we'll see if any of our bits and bobs make it into this moment. So I'm gonna glue in our final little central piece. Ooh. Cute.
Very cute.
And then just give it a fluff. Once you've got everything that you think you want on your wreath, just go ahead and hold it up in the manner that it's going to be hung. And we're gonna see if everything is falling in the correct way that we want it to. So if something is being a little floppy, I went ahead and glued this little piece because it was flopping down and I really wanted it to follow the circle. But I feel really good about the rest of it. I feel like it's doing what we want. It's a really cute fall wreath, And I really like how it turned out.
I know, me too.
I think it's great.
Yeah. I love that a lot of this is what we gathered ourselves, so it's a bit more personal and locational too. We hope that you guys enjoyed what you found and foraged and applied to your wreath, and we hope you have fun finding a spot for it in your home.